Welcome to Put Simply, the podcast that puts what's happening in the world simply without compromising on the details. Erdem Koch is my name, Rodney McCune and Ozan Ibrisim are my co-hosts. Gents, good to be with you again.
Good to be with you.
Hi, guys.
Well, after a 2-month election campaign in the Philippines, the fight starts between the two most powerful families in that country. So much history between these two families and so much history between these who were once allies. Ozan, set the scene for us. Who are the parties that we're talking about here and what's the relevance to them, to the country in general?
So we had on May 12th the election for the midterm election, they call it, which involves, I think, about 8,000 positions in the Philippines of governors, mayors, various different elected posts. But of course, the one that's been most watched and probably the most significant one is the election of the Senate. Now, that's very interesting and very consequential because, as our listeners will probably know, that there has been a bit of a rift between those two families that you talked about, being, of course, the Marcos family and also the Duarte family. So Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is the president, and then former President Duarte's daughter is the vice president, and they effectively got elected in 2022 under what was at the time a historic alliance between two very strong political families, but that rift has widened, and there have been some controversies, and there has been some conflict, a lot of which amounted to effectively the vice president, so Duarte's daughter, being Sara Duterte, being effectively impeached for misappropriation of funds, not being able to show earnings, etc. And of course, very similar to the US system, the impeachment process takes place ultimately at the Senate level, whereby senators become jurors, and they get to decide whether Sara Duterte, the vice president, is found guilty or not guilty, and she could face a penalty of effectively lifetime ban from politics, which would effectively mean that she can't run in 2028, and she's considered obviously a big rival or a big kind of prospect or candidate for that 2028 election. So the midterms have taken place. I believe that results are still being counted, but it looks like the Vice President Sara Duterte's coalition, or those who are loyal to her, seem to be doing a lot better than they were expected to do, which might mean that for the 12 Senate seats that are being contested out of the 24-member Senate, she may just get enough to be able to block the impeachment and effectively the kind of penalty that might be imposed from that impeachment. So it's one to watch. Generally speaking, it's Philippines democracy is alive and well, and it's a very energetic time. Elections during within the Philippines. So it's been an interesting result. I think we'll know probably more over the next couple of days as all of the votes get counted. But of course, Rodney, maybe you can run us through another very interesting result from this election.
Every result's interesting, Ozan, but completely right. Obviously, the vice president wants to run in 2028. The issue is whether she is impeached. Like all good political trials, the jury's bought before they hear any evidence. And it's really about who gets elected and what way they're going to vote, irrespective of what they hear. It's an increase in terms of the vote for independence, which suggests that there is some rejection in the Philippines of this political family soap opera. And of course, the Sara Duterte's father, former president, who the current president, I'm going to say facilitated, which is obviously a very good word in terms of the American legal vocabulary at the moment, facilitated the arrest of her father, the former president, who's in The Hague, who has himself now been elected to a mayoral post in Davao city, which is where their family traditionally have done very well electorally, because he's on trial at The Hague, where he's in custody and hasn't been convicted of any crime. He is eligible to run. So I was going to say in any great campaign for attention for a prisoner who is pending trial and disputes the validity of their incarceration, run them for election and see if you can get enough people to vote for them. It's certainly something which has been prevalent in Irish politics historically, and it's now featured in the Philippines. So yes, in The Hague, waiting trial on serious criminal
Crimes against humanity, I think.
actions which are crimes against humanity, state-sponsored execution, etc. And the good people of the usual voter bloc that they got have decided to make him city mayor. And I think his son's been, or if he hasn't been elected yet, is likely to be elected the deputy mayor. So it's anticipated he's going to take over the reins, whilst his father gets on with the legal stuff in Holland.
Well, a turbulent year indeed for the Philippines as I guess the next little while, the next little chapter plays out, and we'll keep our eye on that. Let's flip over to Albania now. And Rodney, it seems the Prime Minister is going to be returned to power.
Yeah, Eddie Rama's looking good for a fourth term. He's from a Western European perspective, this is good news, given some of the stuff that's been going on with Fico and Orban, and the question mark around the Romanian presidential election, which has a far right contender in a good position, which is next weekend. So I'm sure we'll discuss this next week. Eddie Rama's pro EU, pro West, is looking good. His left of centre parties over 50%, right wing coalition significantly down. And it looks like he'll be returned with an increased majority, but there's a lot of economic and social challenges still within Albania, and I'm sure that the EU are very aware that his campaign to get full membership by 2030, and having previously campaigned on getting Albania into the landing flight path for European Union membership. The European Union will be well aware that there's an elevated expectation on behalf of the Albanian people, and this could go very badly wrong in terms of the EU's perception if they string this out as they have done with other candidate countries in the past. The interesting additional factor in this election is diaspora vote, which is strongly in favour of Rama, and that may not have swung it, but it was certainly a significant feature in what's likely to be a very strong performance for his party at this election. So yeah, fourth term and stability in Albania, and a nod to the West at a time when there's a lot of nerves within Eastern Europe, and the way that certain elections have been going, and may well go again next weekend.
So, Ozan, what do you think the international community, particularly the West and the US, would sort of analyze these election results? What does it mean for them?
Well, I was going to be cheeky, and I thought Rodney might go here, but I think many in the West and many in the kind of international commentator space looking at this as another kind of snub or opposition to Trump and Trumpism coming from the US. Some have highlighted it as just another failure for Trump outside of the US. And the reason for that is that the Centre Party, which are called the Democrats, confusingly, they hired Chris Lasivita, who those who may know, or to put simply, was the mastermind, or was considered as one of the masterminds of Donald Trump's 2024 election campaign. So they hired him, and I think it was quite a Trumpian type of agenda that they were pushing. And I have to say that the newly re-elected Prime Minister has one hell of a sense of humour, and I'm going to quote him overnight as the results came in, saying, and this is a direct quote from him: hiring Lasavita and thinking you can become Trump is like hiring a Hollywood hairdresser and thinking you'll become Brad Pitt. So I thought that was quite a quite a nice little thing. And he questioned the Democrats for believing, and I quote, just because someone worked for Trump, they carry some kind of magical Trump power by association. In any case, it was a comedy worth watching. So again, it's not just a comedy or a circus in the US. It seems to be that they're trying to export their unique brand of circus acts and political kind of, I suppose, comedy show out to other countries, and countries are not, well, they're very much outright rejecting it. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean the opposition candidate is someone who had similar age, I suspect, to Donald Trump, and also had former high office. So maybe there were more similarities between him and Trump than the campaign team took to exploit. But yeah, quite funny.
Well, staying in Europe, and the Catholic Church has its new leader. The first American to fill the role of Pope, a Chicago-born Robert Francis Prevost, the 69-year-old, now becomes the new Pope. Ozan, take us through the election process. I guess was interesting, and we were all sort of waiting for the white smoke to bellow out of the Sistine Chapel, and the first American Pope, which was initially met with some celebratory moments in the US, but it didn't really last long, did it?
No, actually, the white smoke did end up coming out on the second day of the conclave. I think the second or third round of voting by the cardinals. So the white smoke came out, and I think most of the world was watching eagerly to see who would come out onto the balcony. And it happened to be Pope Leo the Ninth, as you mentioned, a US-born, a native of Chicago, cardinal who had spent, I believe, most of his time working with the poor in South America and various other parts of the world. So there was some joy, I guess, from the US. In fact, President Trump tweeted that he was honored to have an American Pope. But then, of course, the MAGA news kind of the media and a lot of the MAGA people started to kind of get into the debate. And it seems that this Pope is way too woke for the MAGA guys. So some of the MAGA people, I mean, Laura Loomer, who many listeners might know, is effectively a very far right-wing influencer, and somebody commented that she is one of the most influential people in the world right now because she has President Trump's ear. She tweeted woke Marxist Pope, and people were joking that she had exhausted pretty much her vocabulary with those three words. And others, Steve Bannon, before actually the Pope had been elected, was warning against this, what he called a dark horse, who could be elected by the cardinals, and saying that he's extremely woke. He's effectively a globalist. So yeah, it's amazing that that we have a Pope that again manages to divide the US. Some hailing him as an amazing kind of continuation of Pope Francis and a progressive Pope, etc., and others from the MAGA crowd saying that he's too woke. And I think many of the things at the heart of his criticism, their criticism, was also the new Pope being quite tweeting things that were quite supportive of George Floyd's case and Black Lives Matters, and most recently criticizing J.D. Vance on a number of issues. So it seems that he's not, and in fact, some of them are going as far as saying, in terms of conspiracy theories, that this Pope was elected to kind of stand up to Trump and be the kind of somebody who could balance him out, etc., and was being backed by globalists. I haven't yet heard that George Soros was involved in this, but no doubt that that will come sooner or later.
So, Rodney, there's a lot of jokes on Twitter about being an American-made Pope. He's going to avoid the tariffs of the US, of course, and what Donald Trump is sort of imposing on the rest of the world. But what do you think about the fact that the first American Pope to be leading the Catholic Church and of course the incredibly important role that the popes traditionally play? Is it the timing of that with Trump at the moment? Is it something to I guess be to take note of? Are there likely to be implications, or is it sort of business as usual on both ends?
Yeah, I don't think we can read too much into it. I mean, he's not only the first American Pope, he's the first Peruvian Pope as well, given his dual citizenship. So there's more than one person claiming that. Right.
The Peruvians don't seem divided, though.
I mean, I also read somewhere that he liked tennis. So perhaps if there was a tariff war, he'd be interested in returning the serve. And in terms of Pope Leo or Leon, I think the first one was famous for facing down Attila the Hun. So maybe that's where the Trump analogy comes in. I don't know.
Well, interestingly, he's called himself Pope Leo the Ninth, and people are reading into it, saying that popes, they never used to historically, but in recent times have been choosing previous popes that they felt an alignment to in terms of their reading of the doctrine and their view of Catholicism, etc. And Pope Leo the Eighth, I believe, was famous or well known for standing up for workers' rights at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution at the end of the 19th century. So many people are reading quite a bit into that to say that he's certainly continuing with a bit of that kind of standing up for the disadvantaged and standing up on issues that matter for him and kind of his brand of Catholicism. So look, it'll be interesting to see. It's always exciting to see that very important kind of role being filled by a new person, and let's see what type of things that he does and what type of issues he gets involved in.
If there is someone who is elected Pope who has more of a Latin sounding name, are they allowed to keep it? That's something I would be interested in as well. Because obviously Robert doesn't really fit maybe with the historical context, and he maybe had to go for something slightly different. But if you're called Francis anyway, or Leon as it may be, or Leo, perhaps you would be able to keep your own name and you wouldn't have to, because it's an odd thing to change your name when you find yourself elevated to high office.
Imagine if we changed our names after every promotion that we got.
I would have the same name. I've never been promoted, so I'd probably be all right if I've been elevated sufficiently the high office to ever have to face that challenge. So I think I'd probably be inoculated from that.
Well, Rodney the 11th. I think that has a good sort of sound into it, mate. Ozan the 4th.
Well, what about Ozan the Fourth? I'd be more kind of suitable for some sort of Ottoman emperor than Pope with that name, Mehmet Ozan the Fourth.
Sultan Mehmet. Well, let's stick with the sticking with the American theme now. And both the US and China confirmed this week a reduction in the tariffs that they imposed on each other, following, of course, the initial escalation by President Donald Trump earlier this year. This must be a victory for Trump, Rodney.
It's certainly a victory for the stock market. It sort of rallied on that point, but I don't really know that if you create chaos and then tidy it up a little bit, you really do get credit for that. I mean, they could only come down because any further increases would have been meaningless. It's like explaining to a 4-year-old the difference between a really large number and infinity. And it felt like we were moving in that direction with just random numbers being put out as percentage tariffs on various stuff. It feels to me that more than a victory for Trump, it's more evidence that Trump's bluster and not someone prepared to finish what he says he's going to do because he got cold feet. Obviously, one was in relation to the economic impact, but also clearly concerned that there was going to be empty shelves in America, and no doubt the explanation of kids needing fewer toys or dolls, as was his example, um, was probably landed really badly, and he probably was told that by those who he does trust, and there must be some, that this really hadn't gone down particularly well. So I wonder whether the markets plus the prospect of empty shelves spooked him sufficiently that he had to fold and start agreeing to things being reduced, because we don't really know at this stage what concessions, if any, that China have made, and they made it very clear from the start that they would not be playing his game. They don't appear to have done so, and no doubt when we get some more detail, we'll find out if that really is the case.
We'll be waiting for the detail, my friend, because
For a very long time.
You'll be waiting a very long time because, very in a similar vein to what you just said, many commentators have been labeling this the equivalent of an arsonist lighting a fire and then, putting out a little bit of it bit by bit and then, hailing themselves as a hero. So this is exactly what it is. And the UK deal that was, he made such a big deal of and the administration made such a big deal of was exactly the same thing. Before Donald Trump came into the presidency on January 20, there was very little trade barriers. And then he put trade barriers up. The UK didn't reciprocate. And then a couple of months later, he brought those trade barriers down and hailed it as a success. This is effectively what he has done with China as well. And you're right, I think he's faced some significant pressure from, some of the adults around the room who've gone, look, what are you doing? This is not going to end well for anybody. And I don't think there are any further details to this. It's literally another press release, another headline. Now, people in the MAGA sphere will hail this as a success and say, look, this is what happens when you stand up to China, and this is exactly what happens, etc. But, effectively all he's done is fix up the thing that he broke, and it's back to what it was 3 months ago before he took the presidency. Nothing has changed. There was a lot of talk about systematic change that was required around, things like intellectual property and all of these things that he was saying that, and the MAGA crowd was saying that they demanded from China. It doesn't appear that any of those sorts of things have been actually kind of agreed to by China. We're back to where we were when he first started, and nothing seems to have been achieved. So, I will continue to take on board arguments that kind of make sense about this strategy being for the long term, etc. But the outcomes are clear. You've had 2 or 3 months of dampened business confidence, consumer confidence, a topsy-turvy stock market, and then 3 months of chaos, and we have nothing to show for
it. You did mention the UK-US trade deal. The best summary of it that I read anywhere was that it's better than where we were yesterday, not as good as where we were a couple of weeks ago, and no idea whether it's better or worse than tomorrow. And I think that's the point. There's nothing to stop Trump going off on one of these moments again, where he simply introduces uncertainty into the whole system and throws everything into chaos for a few weeks at a time. The only difference is perhaps the more times he does it, the more likely people are to ignore whether or not he's serious about seeing the whole thing through.
And look, you raised an interesting point about the stock market as well. The stock market isn't responding. Investors aren't responding to this decision, this announcement, through some motivation or through some sentiment that, oh, great, this is a great outcome, and they're basically responding to it because they're pleased to see that there is no, this insanity might actually be paused for a while, and they might have predictability over the next 90 days, because the decision also was to pause the tariffs for 90 days. So, you know, I suspect his strategy or political strategy will be to kind of try and get this off the agenda, because politically this hasn't been working all that well for him. And then when the 90 days is up, in the lead up, we might see another one of those hasty kind of decisions or moves by him on this stuff to try and force the issue again. But if I was looking at this from a political point of view, it's a good way to get it off the agenda. It'll be interesting to see where he goes to next, what issue he will kind of pick up and run with.
Well, where he is running to is, of course, the Gulf. He's landed in Saudi Arabia for his tour of the Gulf states. He may very well visit Turkey as part of the peace talks between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky of the Ukraine and Russia. But $1 trillion is on the line for Donald Trump. That's the deal that he wants to make. That's the money that he sort of wants to return with, or the promise of the money he wants to return with to the United States. But one thing that has been promised to him is a luxury jet from the Qatari royal family, which Trump has said he will use as his Air Force One temporarily, and then basically take it, worth around $400 million. And I guess commentators are saying, well, this is sort of an example that of him unable to separate the public office and the personal benefits. Rodney, what did you make of it all?
I saw his interview where he said, what do people expect me to do? Turn it down? The answer is yes. That's exactly what they expect you to do. They expect you to turn it down so that you're not being gifted something by a foreign state, who then, when you take any decision that might look like it's in their favor, people don't say, what's that all about? I think that's because of the airplane, perhaps, right? And it's not just any old airplane. It's overly trashy and tacky and everything. It's all the things he probably really wants. But he's taken it from Qatar, who have decent relations with Hamas, decent relations with Iran, and other certain players. If anyone attended a university in the US and held those relationships, they'd be looking to deport them. But because they're sitting in Doha, he's happy to take an airplane for free. I mean, it's classic Trump. No one will really challenge him on it, but it's and I mean, it just lacks. I'm going to say it just lacks integrity in every way. But do we expect anything different? Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, what I find absolutely absurd about it is the Qatari royal family are gifting him a plane that was built in his country. He is the president of the country where that plane was built, and he's saying things like, "Well, why wouldn't I take it? That would be stupid not to take a gift." Like, what the US government, the Department of Defense, who I understand is acquiring this, can't afford to buy a new Boeing plane. Like, why are you relying on gifts? He's making it out as though that things are so desperate, like some sort of banana republic, that it's fantastic that someone's gifting us a plane that we built. And this is a great thing for taxpayers, and it's great for Americans, etc. But little does anybody realize that the Department of Defense is taking control of the plane and will retrofit it to make sure that it can be flown as Air Force One, which I suspect is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to do anyway. So again, the taxpayers are going to have to pay for it regardless. And he's saying that once once he's finished with it, he'll decommission it and put it in his library, like Ronald Reagan did with another plane. Apparently, there's a plane at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and President Trump saying that that plane makes his library really successful, and he believes that this plane being at his presidential library will make his presidential library very successful. I've not been to a presidential library, which is a shame because I'd like to go to one. But a gold fitted aeroplane at the presidential library. I'm not sure how interesting or how amazing that will be for anybody that will visit his presidential library in the future. But who am I to make comments on these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he doesn't know that people ask for stuff. You know what I mean? As part of the UK trade deal, he was repeatedly, reportedly, allegedly badgering the UK to put pressure on the Royal and Ancient so that the Open would be held at one of his golf courses in Scotland. Um, and I think they got the Scottish Open in the end, a lesser golf course. But you know, his ability to separate personal and national interest is basically zero. I just don't know whether presidential libraries have ever hosted airplanes before. I'm not sure. But has he even got one from his first administration? I don't think he does. But
No,
maybe that's a
he's eligible for one, but yeah, Ronald Reagan's one apparently has an aeroplane in it. That's why he's excited about putting this aeroplane in there.
ah,
But
it's a
look, I
shame
was
that
actually it would have been hilarious if the UK government offered him like a Rolls Royce that he could retrofit as part of the whole trade agreement that they were doing. That would have been fantastic. I'm sure he would have taken it.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have, but they're not. He's not getting his golf tournament apparently, because it would be it would require corruption on the other side, which might work for some states, but it won't work so
I,
easily in the UK. I'm trying to think of what the UK makes, that's still sort of British made that might be iconic that he might be able to get a Brompton bike or something out of Keir Starmer. That's about it.
Well, I mean, we joke about all of this, but it is just a sign of the norms just slowly being, disintegrated. And because, I mean, have a look, Rodney, you and I live in Singapore. I'm from Australia. And, the Australian Prime Minister who got re-elected last week got under massive fire for, 5 or 6 years ago about getting a few upgrades on Qantas, which is the national carrier. And, he got into massive, massive trouble for that. And that was a big scandal. As you aware, and others probably who are listening to this show might be aware that, recently the former transport minister in Singapore is serving jail time for flying on the private jet of one of his stakeholders and getting some free tickets to the Grand Prix, etc. Now, these this
Well, a
is
former, Ozan, don't forget, a former New South Wales Premier in Australia resigned because he hadn't declared a $3,000 bottle of wine.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a bottle of wine here.
But this is how democracies should run. This is what transparency is about. Accountability is all about. And having like this is just beyond belief in terms of what he's talking about. And I guarantee you, he won't put this in the library. He'll probably fly around with it once he finishes his presidency, because that's just the type of person he is. He's, not to mention all of the meme coins that he's got out there. That's something we haven't touched on. But, if you want to talk about bribes, you can talk about the many, many different countries that are lining up to buy his meme coins. And he's now announced that he's going for the first 22 highest, or the wallets that have got the most Trump meme coins, will get a private dinner with him and a tour of the White House. I mean, could you imagine in any other country, Western democracy or any other country, where this happened? Like this would just be scandalous. I mean, I don't even know. It would be nuclear kind of in terms of the media scandal around it and the media coverage around it. And could you imagine if Biden had done that? Hunter Biden, they were the right wing media and the MAGA ecosystem was going crazy over him using his father's name for influence. But this family seems to be just doing it very openly, and nobody is really doing anything about it. It's unbelievable, unbelievable.
Wow. It's not the only craziness going on in the world. I mean, South Korea's just kicked off their presidential replacement presidential election, because as you know the outgoing president or the ousted president declared martial law for about a day which you loved, Ozan. It was one, I think it might have been one of your favorite political events of
It
the
wasn't
last
even a
12.
day. It was like 3 hours.
So it gets better, right? Because the Conservative Party then elect or selected their candidate, um, uh, and that was all going well. And then they decided that their own candidate, who was Kim Moon Soo, was not really that popular, and they were looking to replace their candidate, a little bit like the Biden Harris thing. I think maybe maybe that's the good analogy.
Yeah.
And the party's ruling committee replaced him with replaced Kim Moo-soon with Han Duck-soo, who was in place as the replacement candidate for a very short period of time, because after the ruling committee replaced the candidate, it went to the membership, who reversed the decision, and Kim was reinstated as the candidate and has now got to go off, knowing that his own party basically don't back him for the president or large swathe of the leadership of his own party, although he's maybe supported with the rank and file, who took the view that it was was a bit unfair to replace him. Imagine that had have happened in the Democratic race last year, where after the debate, where it looked pretty ropey for Biden, that they replaced him with Harris, only for a few days later to reinstate Biden based on some procedural rule within the Democratic Party. I mean, that would have been insane, and certainly would have led to a much worse result from the Democrats than the one they actually suffered.
Yeah. I'm deeply.
Never change your candidate unless you really have to, and don't ask someone to go out and campaign with everyone fully aware that their own party doesn't even support them. I mean, those are pretty key things to avoid, right?
I'm really concerned about the South Koreans because they just haven't managed to do politics very well. This whole failed martial law, I guess, coup, etc., only lasted 3 hours because the person doing it didn't realize that the people, that were in his party were actually going to support it in the parliament, and they managed to make the parliament sit, and everyone went, yeah, no, we don't support this, and yeah, he ended up with egg on his face. But I'm starting to feel a bit concerned that these guys need some, some lessons in political maneuvering because they seem to not really know what's going on.
And just quickly before we sign off for the week, Ozan, President Trump's new pick for US Surgeon General could have a bit of a bumpy road towards confirmation. Tell us about Dr. Casey Means and why that's the case.
Well, it appears that she's no longer a doctor, so that might be, one, I won't say disqualifying factor, but something that senators who are going to confirm her might take into consideration. She didn't finish her residency. Apparently, she left that halfway through, and when she was actually practicing as a physician, she was doing some sort of I know nothing about medicine, but some sort of form of medicine, which is kind of preventative medicine, and very much reliant on traditional rather than Western medicine, and kind of holistic, etc. All of these things that you would kind of expect not to be in the CV of the top doctor of the US. Of course, she's a RFK Jr. special. He loves her and has put her forward. And President Trump has said that as long as RFK Jr. likes her, she's really great choice for this. She's also involved in a whole bunch of vitamin supplement businesses that I believe her brother or brother-in-law or something rather runs. So she's a huge influencer, very big following on social media, where she talks about a whole bunch of alternative medicine and all of these sorts of things. And I'm not trying to be offensive here to those who believe that there's a role for alternative medicine and these sorts of things, but I would think that I'm not sure when the last time somebody was able to beat cancer with meditation or whatever it is that they use in these forms of medicine. I would think that the US could probably do better as their top doctor.
It also conflicts with Trump announcing that he's going to reduce the cost of prescription medicine widely between anything between 30 and 90%. He wasn't very clear about what that reduction was, which might be sort of relevant to anyone who's trying to plan ahead. But in maybe in this new world, they won't need any medicine anyway, so it'll all be good.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Great.
his spokesperson was asked about the details, and she basically said, look, this is all you need to know, that medicines are going to come down. So it was a little light on detail in terms of how he was going to actually do that. But, let's see. I mean, let's remain hopeful, because that would be a very good thing. I think that would, if he actually did manage to have that outcome, I think we'd all be applauding. But there's no kind of roadmap in terms of how he's going to do it, or they haven't released it.
You look, at least she won't feel out of place about not being properly qualified for the job. It's not like Hegseth was ever a great military strategist. It's not like Matt Gaetz, who first choice was ever not a criminal. Do you know what I mean?
I forgot about Matt Gaetz. There's not enough Matt Gaetz in my life anymore. God.
Yeah. So don't worry about it. And
bring back Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, bring him back. It's time for him to step forward and serve. Yeah. All right.
Well, who knows? That's where we would have landed this week. But there you have it on Put Simply. Boys, thank you so much for your time this week. See you next.
Thank you.
Guys.